Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Vincent Green.
And I'm your host, Noel John Toohey.
We got Carmack in the back, and this is MDK Presents Adam Cahill. And sorry, Adam, tell the folks who you are and what you do.
So I'm a filmmaker, writer, director, producer, editor from Dublin. I got my...
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you kind of have to be in this industry when you're starting out. Do you know what I mean? It just saves on the funds when you're doing all the jobs yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why hire when you can learn? You know.
So I got my film production degree from the University of Wolverhampton, and just been trying to make bits and pieces ever since. That was back in 2016. So Fall of the Dead was my first feature film that I made directly after that, and then I've just been trying to make shorts since then, and just editing for other people for their films and whatnot. So doing my best to try and get on the next rung bit by bit.
And what inspired you to become a filmmaker, Adam?
A number of things, mostly obviously watching films. Massive fan of Lord of the Rings when I was younger, so that kind of got me in.
Who isn't?
Yeah, for sure. I find it very strange.
Never heard of it.
I find it very strange when anyone says they watched Lord of the Rings and they didn't like it. And I was like, man, this is like one of the most epic things that's ever happened.
I feel uncomfortable. Yeah, no, I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you watch Lord of the Rings and you're not instantly compelled to watch the appendices as well, then you and I can't be friends. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm just saying. So if somebody said to me, "Hi, I'm a trans gay Muslim from blah blah blah," I'd be cool. What are you drinking? But if somebody says I don't like Lord of the Rings, I'm like, sorry, you know what? God, where has the time?
I did not know where you were going with that sentence for a second, dude.
That's it. You just like
some heavy editing on this episode.
I'm sorry, but I was raised in a very conservative film household.
Yeah. So Lord of the Rings got me into not only into films, but it also got me into doing a lot more reading. I wasn't really a big reader until that, and then obviously I wanted to get stuck into Tolkien's books, and that was the biggest influence first of all. And then when I decided to actually go make my own films was when I saw Signs. I don't know if you've seen M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, but I absolutely loved that movie. And there was something about watching that made me think it was so simple and so subtle, and yet that there was so much tension and an incredibly well crafted story. I was like, you know what, I think I'd actually like to give this a go. And I got into filmmaking initially because I wanted to act in my own stuff, but once I then was making my end of year project in my final year of college, I had the opportunity to write something that I built a set for, and then I had actors performing things that didn't exist until I wrote them only a few days earlier. And I was like, this is amazing. This is much better than being in front of camera. So yeah, that's kind of, I got the bug then and just wanted to do that ever since.
It's funny, we were talking to Mark Scheffler of Last House on the Left, and he said something quite similar to that like he had the view of being here, but he found what was going on behind the camera to just be so fascinating and so interesting that he just wanted to be there. Yeah. So yeah, you do. It's kind of as you go. I have one question. I suppose it's very superfluous, so I'll just throw it out of the way early. How did you get that amazing shot from the top of O'Connell Street of the zombie attack without a load of lads coming by going, "Where?" I was looking at it. I was going, "How did you do it? This is like 3:00 in the morning on a Monday."
Dude, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's exactly what I was going to say. It was 4:00 on a Monday morning, and absolutely dead. We had one. It was so annoying. We had one man. There's a block of apartments just at the end of that road across the way from the Garden of Remembrance, and there was at one stage when
I used to live in one.
Okay.
That doesn't blow your mind. I used to live in one.
I hope it wasn't you that I'm about to talk about, but
no, I was saying, unless you shot it in 2005, I think we're saying.
No, it wasn't that far back. But yeah, a guy. We obviously had to do quite a number of takes of that shot, and the fact that we were making a little bit of noise at one stage, a guy came out and opened his front door and just stood there like this, watching us from across the way. And I was like, I can't get this shot again if he doesn't go in. So I stormed over to him, and everyone else was behind me going, Adam, leave him alone, please don't cause a scene. But I was calm and cordial, and he went away, so we were able to get what we wanted.
Drop kick to the knees.
I would have convinced him that was a real zombie apocalypse. Don't you see what's happening, fool?
The end is nigh.
Can I tell you can I ask what the Like this was at some stage this was absolutely nothing, and then it was a spark, and that spark. Did you just were you a zombie guy, or was it like what you were saying about science, where you were like, you know what, this idea, it's expansive, but I think I could shoot it inside of a bubble really well. Was it that, or was it just that? Like how did this fall into
the way
your lap?
that it ended up was totally different from the way that it started, to be honest. So like initially it was actually a short film, and it wasn't written by me at all. It was the lead actor in the film, Luke Corcoran. He's also a writer, he's a playwright, but he came to me after seeing one of my short films, and he was like, Adam, that looked unreal, can we talk about maybe doing something together? I said, yeah, no problem. So we met.
Name drop the film, dude.
Inertia. It was my end of it was my end of year film when I finished up in Wolverhampton. He was acting in one of the other films at the end of year show, and so he saw the film in the cinema and thought it was class. So I was like, oh, thanks very much. So we ended up meeting up for a coffee anyway, and he handed me this I think it was maybe 15-20 page zombie short. It was called Crack of the Dead at the time, and so he pitched the idea to me, and I read it obviously, and we discussed just doing it for a bit of fun, because it was definitely very, very comedy centered, but it was supposed to be shot in Dublin exclusively. And then when we had a few issues with getting location sorted, because we were meant to shoot it in his apartment, and then he ended up having to move out and move somewhere else. So I said, look, while we're kind of on hiatus with this thing, can I just take it? Because I was obsessed with the idea of Irish millennials dealing with the zombie apocalypse, because we'd seen the Gen Xers with Shaun of the Dead, and we'd seen the previous generations with Romero, and I was like, okay, no, what would Irish millennials do in this situation? And it really gripped me for whatever reason. And I said, let me just go away and work on the script. And he said, yeah, no problem. So when I came back to him, I was like, there's a 100-page script now, and we're shooting it in the countryside. So I just felt like it made an awful lot more sense to shoot it away from. So we have Dublin goes into chaos. Everything is destroyed. There's a blackout. We don't know what's going on. So the millennials are like, is it fake news? Is it just a load of viral videos that are not? Do you know what I mean? So they're not taking it seriously.
If somebody doing it they're going to get like 10 million views on YouTube, and because that's true, you're absolutely spot on. You are spot on.
Because even the character, I've got the characters here on my top, by the way. But even
you know what, I was going to get to it. But it took me a minute to cop it, but I was just like, there.
This girl here, Liv, she's obviously the celebrity wannabe in the film, and
yes.
And she really encompasses that. You know what I mean? Because that's what, like, everybody is just thinking. Is it going to be? Is it literally just wannabe, viral videos kind of that are being put out there? And she represents that idea in her own circle that this is what, she's going to turn this opportunity into she's going to turn this crisis into an opportunity for her to become a celebrity. So,
which is what people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it made the most sense to do that.
I found this film to be very, of course it was very lighthearted, and it had heavy moments, and I think that's always what I love in a zombie film. It's never going to be the most bleak film ever, but it's also not going to lift your spirits. Even Shaun of the Dead had that horrible moment where his stepfather started to die and stuff like that. It actually did have moments of brevity, so you did that really well. But I remember thinking at the same time, all of the most horrible stuff I've seen on the internet is somebody running up to a car crash and filming it and saying, oh my god, y'all, you're not going to believe what happened. And you're thinking, this is real life suffering. And I thought that would, like, when you were talking about trying to get the millennial approach, that much you've nailed. That's not even a compliment, that's just a straight statement.
No, thanks, I appreciate that.
That much you in fact, the fact that they weren't all doing it is probably the only thing.
It would have been a very kind of one note movie if they were all doing
I get that.
Yeah.
Did it go to plan? Was it, because like you said, it just sounds like you've moved from, let's say, an original concept in Dublin down to the countryside. Did it all go to plan after that, or was it a stop start? It felt very smooth, but because you never know what it's like, the stress of making a film. I just got to enjoy it. Like Jaws, people talk about the absolute nightmare that film actually was. Was this okay? Once you got your crew and your guys together, did it go well?
The actual production was incredibly smooth. It was the post-production where we ended up having kind of a hell of a time, to be honest. But the production itself, we decided, the big zombie horde scene at the very end of the film, we shot that in the first 2 days of filming, And once that was out of the way, it was like, okay, it's clear sailing from here, because it obviously it's kind of the majority of the start of the film is just the suspense and the comedy, and that was all very easy to shoot. It's all very low key, very few actors on set. There wasn't anything too frantic, and it was only that initial first 2 days where we were like, right, look, well, let's get this done, because if we fail at this, it's not going to work, and we need this scene. So we shot that in over the first 2 days, and then it was like, yeah, no, we nailed it. We nailed the hardest part. The rest of it is a breeze. And it was literally only in post production then where kind of we had some issues.
You tempted the gods, man. You said, no, this is going to be clear sailing from here on out. God himself couldn't sink this ship.
I didn't anticipate how difficult the post-production was going to be, and therefore I didn't set enough of the budget aside for post-production. And then I ended up having to, because it was self-funded, I ended up having to then spend time earning more money to be able to come back to it and go, okay, we're gonna, we can finish it off now, which was a pain, because having shot it in 2017 to now only be releasing it in 2021 it was heartbreaking, because I felt like the worst part of it was that I felt like a lot of the cast and crew had almost kind of moved on to something else, and not kind of their love for it had waned. And it wasn't until we started kind of winning at festivals that they were like, oh wow, people actually love this film, and then they're getting back into it again.
Yeah, that must have been a nice feeling.
But the devastating thing about that again was we couldn't go to any of the festivals, because of the COVID situation. Most of the festivals went online, and they weren't physical. And then the physical ones are now mostly saying you need to have your vaccine pass.
Exactly how we saw it.
So
with the Waterford Film Festival, that was completely digital.
Yeah, a lot of them are doing that, and I hope that doesn't stick, because it's just not right to be paying that kind of money to be submitting your film, and then for it all to be done online. I think is not.
Well, I used to go to the not to go too off topic, because I know we don't have a terrible lot of time, but I went to the horror con.
Go off topic.
But I went to the IFC, whatever it was in Dublin, Horrorton festivals for maybe 10 years in a row, or 10 out of 12 years or something, and it was being there that I loved. Like, I loved the films, and to be honest with you, I had seen a lot of films. Like Predator was one of the films, Gremlins was one of the films, but like it was being there, and that's what's great. It's to see these projects that these
to meet the creators and the artists,
working opportunities,
and just see people who are starting out, and people who are kind of using what they have available to them, which isn't Miramax or something like that, and still being able to make these wonderful stories and interact and blend with people. Yeah, you're right. I hope it doesn't stick myself. I really, really, really do.
Yeah. So please God, going into 2022, now things will change a little bit.
So Adam, one thing I noticed, because you kind of started off, you said this is your first feature movie and stuff, that and it was in the horror genre. And one thing I always said about the horror genre is, if there's any genre that kind of ingratiates itself to lower budget movies out of all of them, is horror more than anything. Because we're fans, we're like, I'm a horror nut and so is Noel. We don't care about the budget, we just want to hear the story or see the story, and if sometimes the budget's not there or whatever, we'll still appreciate the story itself. And is that one of the reasons you picked horror, or is just because you fell in love with the story, like you mentioned a moment ago?
It was literally just because it's never it's not I love making genre movies. I'll always make genre movies, but it's not necessarily going to be horror. It was literally that just was happenstance because of the film that Luke Corcoran had already pitched to me, so like I'd be happy to do horror again, but it's genre movies that really kind of mean something to me. And also just it's the theme. What's the message of the film? What am I trying to say with this film? So that's when it was called Crack of the Dead. It was just a bit of crack. Whereas when I turned it into a feature, it was like, oh no, this means something to me now. I'm not just doing it for the fun of it and to have another film as part of my portfolio. But this is my baby now for the next at least a few years. Because it really does. It means something. So yeah, the fact that it was horror, it helped in the sense that you're right. It's much easier to do than other things. Like I want to do a Western, an Irish Western, the first Irish Western out somewhere in Galway, and it's like a dystopian.
Cowboyos.
There you go.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. I'll send you.
You're welcome to
it. But so like that one's going to be a bit more difficult, because there's going to be a lot of gunfire and whatnot. So it's not quite as easy to do.
Keep Alec Baldwin off your set.
Yeah. Yeah, need to.
Yeah, I said it.
I said it. What? Yeah, it's definitely going to be BB guns on my set for sure.
Do you feel emboldened by the fact that this film actually did have a lot of success, and it actually did pick up all this, especially with all the work you put into it?
Yeah.
And you kind of take, because I'm sure, I'd imagine, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I imagine, like you said, to 2017, I'd imagine somewhere in late 2018, early 2019, it could be kind of like a bit despondent that this was something you poured your heart and soul, is my baby, to use your words. And then to see it come back to life, does this make you think like, yeah, okay, it's a long road, it's a struggle, but yeah, I'm doing this?
Yeah, well,
did you feel emboldened for bigger projects?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you think I need to pull back?
No, I definitely, I was never, for me, it was never like a sinking ship, because I was constantly working on it, even when I had to sit around waiting for funding for the post-production. I was the editor, so I was always making little tweaks and doing things, and working on the promotional aspect, and there's always something to be done on my end. But it was the cast and crew that I felt they might have been a bit disappointed that they were waiting so long to see it come out. But no, yeah, like it definitely gave me a massive lift when we won our first ever award, which was the Kerry International Film Festival. The fact that it was our home country. Do you know what I mean? You sometimes you kind of get, there's a what is that? There's a biblical maxim that says you can't be a prophet in your own home. So you might get success abroad before people at home start to recognize you. Do you know what I mean? But our very first bit of success was in Kerry, and I'm massively indebted to them for that. And we weren't sure whether we were gonna win, but the fact that when that was announced, I gotta say, like, I did shed a tear. And from then on, obviously, it went from strength to strength. And now that we're going into the new year, we're already incredibly grateful to be going into the Dublin International Comedy Film Festival. That's another, it's a blessing for us to be part of that competition, for the fact that that festival, because again, it's Ireland, it's Irish people. I want to make not just genre films, I want to make Irish genre
this
films.
was an Irish. I was watching this with my fiance, and so many, I think it was her that said to me, she was going, that was funnier because we're Irish. Like, there's something I can't give you the examples, but she goes, that was
from the country as well.
Yeah, it was just like that absolute idiocy. She said that it's a special kind of Irish idiocy. You know what I mean? There's stupid people everywhere, but there's your own blend of stupid, and it
has to be Tyke Devery that she's talking about.
There you go. Yeah, she goes, that's just it. That's who that reminds me of. Yes, him. And yeah, she was like, who that reminded me of? And she, not to name drop it, she'd be like, yeah. And you're like, you know what? Our particular gobshite, I could totally see. Like, if we were in a zombie apocalypse, I have I'd like to think I'd be the level-headed one.
We all do.
Not that they're not. Yeah, we like, but we're not. Like,
we're all Rick Grimes in our heads.
Yeah, we're all Rick Grimes in our heads. But I like that, and I also think that when it comes to making something that's mostly funny, I think if you can't drop into something that's a bit dark, 'cause you want to touch upon the actual horror of it, and not completely, like, I always use Transformers, the second Transformers. It was a complete joke of a film, and then when they tried to introduce brevity at it was a joke because the film hadn't earned it. I think when there is, not to spoil, but there is a lost life. Kind of,
Michael Bay spoiled that movie for
everyone. Yeah. But no, I'm talking about his. 2/3 of the way in, there's a death. You actually felt it. It actually had weight. And I think that's great, because even with comedy, you can make people care about characters.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to find.
That's all you need to do.
Yeah. There were. I definitely had to kind of juggle that in terms of writing the script, but then also just in terms of separating the characters, because it tends to be like, so obviously, like, the Chi, this guy here, is obviously like just pure Comedy Central. There's nothing else going on in his head other than making people laugh. And then I find, like, obviously Jay kind of has a mix of, he mixes in with the comedy and the drama, and then these two are just pure.
He's the innocent, I would say, like the closest to a pure, innocent.
Yeah, he so he's able to walk that line, and then with a lot of the other characters, there's like Robbie obviously being the protagonist, and then the kind of the women in his life. It's all the women in his life. He has some sort of kind of responsibility to that he's not living up to, and then that creates the a lot of where the emotion comes from. So I think it's just making sure that you identify, you know, which characters are doing what role in the film. But I also think that I don't know how much this kind of would have caught your attention, but Stephen McKenna is the name of the music composer for the film, and I think he did an incredible job at being able to change the emotion of the scene with the music. You know, there were times where the music made the scary scenes scarier, the funny scenes funnier, and the heartwarming scenes or the heartbreaking scenes more effective as well. So I was very fortunate with the performances, and with the guys in post-production, they were able to elevate that as well as just trying to get it there on the script too.
It takes a village.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it doesn't.
It's such a collaborative art form. I could sit at home and write a novel by myself, and then it would all be on my shoulders. But you really got to make sure that your team are solid when you're making a movie.
Yeah, we've been accused. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, because you mentioned the music and the relationship that the soundtrack and the score has with what the events that are being depicted in the movie itself. And we've seen with some of the greatest classics of all time, like, you know, Jaws, Halloween, The Thing. Do you find, like, did you have a lot of input in that process? Because, like, do you find that to be important, like the way a John Carpenter or Spielberg or someone would use the score to set the tone in absence of a budget or a special effect or something?
Yeah. My first love was music. I wanted to be a singer when I was a kid, when I was growing up. So, and I wasn't until I kind of, when I got a bit older.
Born to perform, man.
I definitely. I'm an artist and nothing else. I'm useless at absolutely everything else. But so like music is incredibly important to me. So I did have a very big input on it in terms of, I basically told Stephen, this is where I want the music. I wherever I felt like the music was necessary, I told him, like, this is where exactly from second to second where I want the music to start and finish for every scene. And then I said, I want a love theme, I want a zombie theme, and I want a vigilante theme. And then I let him do his thing then in terms of actually creating the themes, fitting them in where they needed to be. And then once he had it finished, I sat down with him and I might have had him I said, okay, well, this one's a little bit too busy, so maybe remove some of the instruments, or this one here, give it a little bit more of something, because it goes on a little bit long without changing any beats. But it was mostly like, I was in love with everything he gave me, though, especially the love theme. He gave me, he played the version that's in the film. He played for me first, and then I was like, this is amazing. And then he goes, okay, but I've got a few more bits and pieces, and he played everything else, and I was like, no, the first one, I'm just in love with the first one. I knew what I wanted right away. I was like, no, this is it, so I'm gonna stick with that. And so
that was all original music.
It's available. I'm pretty sure it's available to hear on SoundCloud as well. It's either Stephen McKenna or Driven Pictures, DRVN Pictures. It's one or the other, but I'm pretty sure it's available.
Wow, that's actually an extra layer. You know, I say again, like, it's not like I know how to make a movie from start to finish, but when you're making on a budget, I don't know, like, whatever, try and express the music in certain ways, certain things are available. But there was somebody there actually doing it, and I think it's cool that you give him a shout out as well, because me and Vinny have been accused by Carol, as we call the man in the back, of the one aspect that we never dive into enough is the fact that the music,
the Foley
sets
work,
the tempo.
Right, okay, yeah.
And this is another example of it, because you end up enjoying, you don't realize how much it's affecting you, because you're stimulated by the dialogue and what the action. But you're absolutely right. If you get the music right, it carries. It literally
sets the tone. It literally sets the tone
in a very, very real way.
The sound tends to be the unsung hero. Everyone is captivated by really amazing visuals, because it's like it's right in front of you, and you're just it's undeniable. It's unsuppressible, but it
shouldn't be called a score if you don't get any credit for it. You know what
I mean? But good music and good sound design tends to be like, if you're noticing it, it's probably doing something wrong. You know, so it's kind of flying under the radar a lot of the time. So
should be interwoven into the scene, shouldn't it? Like,
so little caption at the bottom. Do you notice the music here? This is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So good.
Or just like an actor for absolutely no reason. I just feel like there's very tense music, but beautiful and noteworthy. Oh, zombies! How did you? And this is something that I'm asking for selfish reasons, because I'd like to someday make a movie how easy, difficult, whatever is it to pull off a scene with actual viscera, violence, blood, exposure. How would one approach that on what advice would you give to a greenhorn is what I'm asking.
It's again the I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of really talented people working with me. So it's got to be a combination of your actors selling the whatever shot it is you're trying to get, and that comes.
I'm thinking of the baton scene, for example. That's the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, so you really have to have I've started reading comic books recently to get better at that, because you've got to think about it in terms of the framing, like what's in the image, what's in the next image. So to sell that shot, that you've got to be over behind the person that's swinging the bat, so that someone is not actually getting hit in the face, but it's got to look like it. So it's like learning how to make sure that you've got your storyboard where the frames are very, very particular to pull off. You're going from this shot to this shot, and it really looks like that's just happened. It's a lot. It's knowing, as a director, I still have to know what I want my cinematographer to do, how to sell particular actions. So, and again, it does come down to the actors as well, because if those actors couldn't, if Christina Ryan couldn't swing the bat, and if Mary Pat Maloney couldn't take a dive, then that wouldn't have worked. So it's the makeup artist Patricia. Our makeup artist was from Poland. She's absolutely phenomenal. Being able to pull off.
It was excellent. It was excellent work on
the
that.
blood splatters and all
really,
that.
Really was.
It's incredibly important in the zombie movie too. The makeup, the look of the undead themselves.
Yeah, and to sell the kind of any of the impacts that we had, Patricia would have done the makeup for the scene obviously ahead of time. Then we're shooting the scene, and there were certain points where we're like, okay, we need to look like there's blood spraying here. So she's just walking around the set with a squirt bottle with blood in it, and we're like, okay, we need to get blood all over this person's face in the shot while they're moving. Like, okay, no problem. So she's standing next to the camera like this. And then as soon as the person,
really? See, this is what I love. That is so simple. I was expecting, we use like ballistic gel.
No.
No.
Yeah. So as soon as someone is swinging a bat, we just have her off screen, just and she's getting. Simple as you don't overcomplicate these things.
But this is the thing. I think I always talk about, like, there's stuff that happens off camera, and then there's stuff that happens on camera, and then there's stuff that's, I think, is in between, and that is where you're like you said, like the perspective is her coming down, but there's heft. It looks like she's hitting something with heft, and as it's coming up, there's that arterial spray or whatever you want to call it, and even though what I'm seeing is not grotesque, like if a child saw it, they mightn't even understand it. It's not like really down in the dirt.
It's implied gore.
Yeah. But it's implied gore, but it has an effect even on seasoned people like me and Vinnie. I'm thinking, well, this is a gore scene.
Yeah. Well,
it really is.
Even when you get to the edit, there's things that you can do to improve the impact of those things as well. So, for example, I learned from, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Kingsman. I can't remember. Something Vaughn is the name of the director. Matthew Vaughn. I'm always, if I'm not making films, I'm studying films. And so this guy, I learned from him that when you're in the edit, if you want an impact to sell, obviously a film is just a load of still images pieced together, and they're just being played at a certain frames per second. So if you've got a shot where the bat is coming here, right before it hits the head, so let's say it's coming down towards my head now, right as it gets to here, cut out this frame and this frame and go straight into the next one, and it seems way more impactful when it gets the smack. And
so it's almost like it accelerates.
Yeah, exactly.
Then when you get to this point, it's almost like actually accelerates.
Like boom, when you remove those last two frames. So that's
the thing I learned. That's something I learned. We're lying. This is actually never going live. We're just trying to get a class.
Free tutelage. Yeah, so there's all sorts of, like, from beginning to end, there's so many different things you can tweak to improve those kinds of things.
So that's what is this something you would know on your next project? What did this film teach you? Like, okay, you made a film, it was very successful. We loved it. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Obviously, because you learn and you grow, like you said, post-production versus this, moving it from Dublin to here. If you were to make this film right now, let's just say that it never happened, but somebody downloaded what happened into your brain. It only exists with you. What would you have done different? Like, would it have been things that you spent money on that you could probably have tweaked earlier, or post production could have made look better, and saved it for then, or even just have more money to start with? Or like, if you had to make the movie again because it was lost to time, what would you do?
Well, the budget is definitely something I know. Like the production side of things, being a producer, I know way more about what way I should allocate things at this point. So making sure that your budget is accounting for post-production and for marketing afterwards, promotions and stuff like that. That's incredibly important. So that's the biggest one, because as far as Follow the Dead as it is at the moment, when I watched that movie, there are maybe one or two things that I would change, but I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out. So
Hashtag release the Cahill cut.
And you wouldn't even notice the things that I would change.
Wait a minute, was that baton slightly slower that
time? 46 extra minutes.
I just felt like there was 2 extra frames in this thing. This is brutal.
So like, I'm happy with the way things turned out, because as it is, I think that the movie did end up getting released at the exact point where it should have been released, to be honest, because it's been released during a pandemic. It's actually more accessible for a lot of people right now than it would be otherwise. So
more relevant too.
Yeah, I do think it's more relevant, and so I'm happy with the way it turned out. But definitely in terms of a lesson, the biggest thing for me is, as a producer, how to budget. In terms of directing, I would say that every single time that you make a movie, and I can say this because I've also made a lot of shorts as well, but you get braver. You're willing to attempt things that you wouldn't have attempted before. And so what I learned from Follow the Dead, as I said, those first 2 days on set, we're like, okay, this is the stuff that needs to work. And if we fail at this, then we're done. We're toast, because we have no ending. The third act is just butchered. So we had to pull that off. And we pulled off something that I didn't know I was capable of, because we're out 2:00 in the morning in the middle of a field in Ferban with 30 to 40 extras, loads of cast and crew. There's floodlights in the middle of this field that you can't see, that have to light up the whole place. There's a smoke machine going off. It was mad. It was the biggest thing to date that I've ever done in terms of like actual production size. And I didn't know that I could do it. It was, we were just going to try something. We're giving it a go. And so I pushed the boundaries of what I'm capable of by doing that. And it's still in the movie. So going into the next film, I do the same thing. If I felt like, okay, I'm not sure if I can pull this off, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do it, even though I think it might just be like I was at this level. I'm at this level now. I won't get to the next level if I don't push myself. So it's literally about being brave, attempting the thing that you're not sure if you're capable of, but you'll know when you're done.
In terms of like shooting a horde scene, did you go back? You said when you're not making movies, you're studying movies. Like, did you go back and did you look at your contemporaries or the classics and look at how horde scenes are portrayed in like the Shaun Dead, The Walking Dead, like, maybe 28 Days Later to a lesser degree, because that's less about hordes, even though there is that tunnel scene. But like, did you go back and look at movies that exist and look at how they shoot horde scenes for inspiration?
Yeah, I watched Night of the Living Dead. I was already a massive Edgar Wright fan anyway, so I'd seen Shaun of the Dead so many times. So I had, and then 28 days later I love as well. Even 28 weeks later, I know it's not as acclaimed, but I still think it's a very good movie. So yeah, those
very intense movie.
It's very, yeah. So I think that I did have that kind of back catalogue in my head going into it, but yes, I did rewatched a few of them just to kind of be sure that I was on the right track with what I was writing.
Yeah, and did you use drones and shit when you were like shooting hordes, or what way did you shoot?
We did use drones, but unfortunately that was one of the things that kind of failed, because that was all shot handheld. Everything, like our cinematographer Stephen Walsh, absolutely incredible cinematographer. He's just running around with an easy rig and his black magic camera, getting all the shots. Like he was a tank. He was a one-man film crew by himself. So shout out to him. But we did have drone shots as well, but because you've got to light scenes differently for drone shots than you do for the stuff that's down on the ground, so they didn't really kind of come out very well
because of the angle. Is it because it's above the lights?
Yeah, so it just didn't they didn't turn out very well at all. So unfortunately they weren't usable. We did end up using a couple of them in the behind the scenes documentary. We just threw them in there so that they were useful in some way, but in the film no, they weren't good enough, you know. But I mean that's just a lesson learned.
Having it and not needing it is better than needing it and not
Exactly.
having it. You have to throw. I'm sure you have to try a lot of things.
Yeah.
This once again comes to pushing your boundaries.
Yeah.
Like now you know how to do a drone shot better for the next time you want to use it, isn't it? It's all learning on the job. Like.
Exactly. And I mean, I know that I wanted some drone shots in there that aren't in there, but I don't think anybody else watching the film is thinking, you know, this could use some drone shots. You know, like that's fine.
Speak for yourself. I was just sitting there. Could have been done with a drone shot. Could have been done with a drone shot. This is a bullshit. It's not done with a drone.
All your notes on the movie just like need more drone shots.
Yeah, my note to Rob from Step Brothers or whatever it was. This film is a prison on planet bullshit. But at the same time, let's just say I'm going to go like rhetorical on you and just say, Adam, in the alternate universe where this wasn't so well received, do you think you would have the same attitude where you say, look, because a lot of the same things would be true. You pushed your boundaries. You tried your best. But do you think that, like, I know you said you were emboldened, but do you think you're the type of person who would have just said, you know what, I don't care, onwards and upwards?
Yeah.
Because lessons would still be learned. The success is great, but it's probably, is it the defining as an artist?
I think
like failures and successes. Do you think you as a person it would have defined you?
All of my friends and family will tell you I'm stupidly cocky, so I think I'd have just
loved it.
I would have just accepted the lessons, you know. I was like, okay, I know what I did wrong here, here, and here. Going into the next one, I won't make those mistakes again. I'll never make the same mistakes twice. So, that means that if the first movie was a flop, doesn't mean that the second one will, because I won't do the same thing again. And
mistakes are lessons learned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you win or you learn, not lose.
Even successes, like I said, I'm sure if you had it all to do again, you would still do stuff differently because good or bad stuff is always being learned.
Yeah, the thing about positives is that like it gives you more trust in yourself when you want to make creative decisions. So if you get a positive review or editor or some sort of response, when you look at your the next thing, you go, I want to make this decision the first time around. If it wasn't so positive, you might doubt yourself. But with a positive feedback or positive reaction, I think it just allows you to have more trust in yourself when you want to kind of go, okay, I did that zombie scene, I did the horde scene. Now in the next one, I know I can do something like that. Yeah. So I think the positivity and negativity does have a big effect, isn't it? The way your mindset. I know you said you're stupidly cocky, but I think if because it was so positive, now you're going to like, okay, I can trust myself and I trust my process more.
Actually, that might have been the difference between the two parallels, because obviously a level of trust is gained from success. So important.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
But you would have still been stupidly cocky.
Either, no matter what happened, if it was a success, which I'd like to think it is, then I can still look at it and go, I'm not just sitting there going, yeah, it's brilliant. You know, there are small things that I would change. I would tweak this and that, and
don't rest on your laurels.
Yeah, exactly. So when it's
I picture him with a grill that says Cahill.
Oh man! Next time he comes on, he's just all blinged out, like, you know.
Blinged out. Yeah. But like, you know, my niece sent me a text, and she got an antigen test, and it's got the corona, like, and I was like, you finally got a positive test result. That's the silver lining here. That's what it's all
about. Every cloud.
You finally got a positive. You're not.
Yeah, no, you got to take the good from the bad and the bad from the good, and then you're on the right track. There's always something to grow from. So yeah, definitely.
God, man, I wish we could pick your brain for tonight. I really, really, really wish we do. But we are a bit stuck for time. Okay, but it's a joke. What if I? Oh wait, actually, shameless. Well, it's me doing it, so it doesn't count because I have no stock in. Despite the fact I should in. But where would one get one of these hoodies that you were wearing, or where would one be able to interact with you and support you in your arts?
Well, thanks very much for plugging that. Yeah, no, you can get these on followthedead.com. You go to the merch page on that site. You can either follow me, like we've got followthedead.com, and then we're Follow the Dead Movie on Instagram and Facebook. My production company is Wild Stag Productions Limited, so you can go to wildstagproductions.com to see what else we're going to be getting up to. There will be news, hopefully, about a sequel to Follow the Dead coming up very soon. And then, it's Wildstag Media on Instagram and Facebook. And then if you just want to follow me, Adam William Cahill, on all the usual places.
At Adam William Cahill on all the usual places. That's fantastic.
So Adam, sound for coming on, and we're hopefully doing a zombie series in the new year, so we'd love to get you come back on.
Yeah, if you'd be willing to talk to us again, man, we'd love that.
Definitely.
Guest choose the movie, so you pick the movie, we'll just arrange it in advance, and then we'll break it down and have a laugh.
Good, bad, or indifferent. We're not looking for good or bad.
Way.
We're just looking for
anything, anything that, as long as it's zombie inclusive.
Grand. I'm game. I'm down for sure, lads. Absolutely.
Legend. Absolutely awesome. Fantastic.
Nice one, Adam. So so I'll be in touch about that, and I'll hit you up with a link when the episode comes out. And thanks for coming on. So we get out of here, and so this was MDK Presents. I'm your host, Vincent Green.
I'm your host, Noel John Toohey.
And we got Carmack in the back, and that was Adam Cahill. And check out Follow the Dead, people. It's everywhere, and it's a lot of fun. See you next time.
All right.
Out.
Peace.